Hi, I'm Christiana Gaudet. I'm here with more answers to your questions about tarot. Today's question came from a number of people as a result of a blog post I wrote about the archetype of the Hierophant. When reading about it, a number of people said to me, well, if this is how you see the Hierophant, can you also write about the Emperor and compare the two? And I thought, well, isn't that very interesting? Because in a way, the Hierophant and the Emperor are similar, aren't they? They're both very yang energies. They can both describe men in a position of authority. They can both describe institutions. But obviously they're not the same. They are two different cards. And so what we'll do here is take a look at how the Emperor and the Hierophant are the same and different. And we'll look at both the archetypes and the interpretations. Now you may ask, what is the difference between an archetype and an interpretation? Well, interpretations are very fluid. Interpretations can change from reading to reading, from reader to reader. Interpretations change based on the intuition of the reader, perhaps based on the deck that's being used, perhaps based on the context of the question or the surrounding cards. Archetypes, on the other hand, are pretty fixed. The only thing that really changes about an archetype is our relationship to it, how we feel about the archetype or how it resonates with us. And again, when we look at the Emperor and the Hierophant, we're looking at two very yang cards, very masculine cards, very authoritarian cards. And so the way we react to these archetypes may say a lot about the way we feel about yang energy, the way we feel about authority, the way we feel about other people's authority, the way we feel about our own authority. So recognize that. When you look at how you innately react to a particular card, a lot of that has to do with how you feel about the archetype. It's another way that tarot gives us information about ourselves. I often refer to the Emperor as the authority of the community and the Hierophant as the authority of the church. Truly, what we have here is a politician and a priest. But when I say this, I think we have to look at these things from the context of the time and place that gave birth to tarot, where the church would have had a lot more authority than any politician. Another thing we have to think about is how society deals with these archetypes. Since when we look at the Emperor and the Hierophant, I think archetypally we see both of these people, both of these characters, as being worthy of respect. Today, in our culture, though, many of our politicians and many of our priests are not at all worthy of our respect. So does that change the way we look at these cards? For me, it doesn't. But I think it is important to recognize that even though both of these archetypes would talk about authorities who are well-intentioned, whenever one person is in authority over another, there is always room for corruption and abuse. And so even though these archetypes don't speak to me of corruption and abuse, we recognize that that potential is there with both of these cards. So then the question becomes, well, how are these cards different? They're both very yang, they're both very masculine. They can both talk about men in authority positions. They can both talk about institutions, perhaps institutions that have authority over us. How are they different? Well, it might be interesting to look at some of their correspondences. The Emperor is number 4, which is a number of stability. The Hierophant is number 5, which is a number of expansion. The Emperor is related to Aries and fire. The Hierophant is related to Taurus and earth. It's interesting to me that in a way the numbers and the elements both seem to balance each other out. For instance, with the Emperor, 4 is the number of stability, but the element fire is very expansive. With the Hierophant, 5 is the number of expansion, but earth is a very stable element. What do I take from this? The Emperor likes his routine. He does his day-to-day routine very well, but he will step outside of that routine if he needs to protect his community. Remember that the Emperor, as a politician, has the ability to declare war. The Hierophant aspires to something greater than human. Sometimes people believe that he is greater than human. Remember that the Hierophant originally was the Pope, God's chosen representative on earth, according to Catholicism. And so the Hierophant really has to deal with wanting to be more than human, but at the end of the day, really being human. So when I think of the archetype of the Emperor, I think about a father, a community leader, a person who is in a position of authority because he is responsible, because he is stable, because he has adherence to routine and the courage to do what is necessary. He got into his position by being a good guy, by being a guy who could be an authority, by being a responsible guy. The Hierophant, on the other hand, possesses a specific body of knowledge. The Hierophant has mastered some kind of catechism, if you will. Typically, it would be spiritual knowledge, but in today's modern world, I see the Hierophant as having any authority that comes from a body of knowledge. The Hierophant could be a black belt in karate. The Hierophant could be a doctor, an attorney, anyone with an advanced degree. So the difference in the archetypes between the Emperor and the Hierophant is that the Hierophant is in his position because of the body of knowledge he possesses. The Emperor is in his position because of his personal ability to be there. Now the question is, what do you do with these cards when they come up in a reading? Well, either of these cards can represent men. Either could be your father, either could be your boss, either could be you. Either of these cards could represent an institution, a bank, a hospital, a company, a corporation, perhaps the corporation for whom you work. But how are they different? The Emperor can come up to tell you that a situation is stable. The Emperor can come up to tell you that a person is being responsible. The Emperor could come up to remind you to be responsible. The Hierophant can refer to seeking a specific authority, needing to see a doctor, needing to see an attorney. The Hierophant can come up to talk about business ownership or being a boss. The Hierophant can come up to talk about going to school, especially for an advanced degree. So the Hierophant refers more to the body of knowledge. Now we all know that there is an aspect to the Hierophant that can be really pig-headed. And that's what happens when we hang on to a dogmatic belief set, and when we let that dogmatic belief set be the whole of our knowledge, we become a more shadowy side of the Hierophant. And that's the thing, isn't it? Both of these guys have a shadow side. They can both be oppressive. When I see these cards, In their upright positions, I see them as positive. I see the Emperor as responsible, stable, and doing the right thing for the people that he helps, be that his family or his community. I see the Hierophant as an authority who wields his authority appropriately. But we recognize that there are shadow sides to both of these archetypes. An added tradition for the Hierophant is that the Hierophant can actually predict a wedding. Why? Because the Hierophant is a priest, and where do you go to get married? You go to the priest. I want to thank everyone who asked this question, and if you have a question about tarot, please send me an email.